there. My name is Jessica Crow. I am the founder of Apogy and the host of Change Leader Insights, which is a podcast that is all about change, leadership, professional development, self-development. And I'm so excited because I have with me here today Richard Pharro. He is the founder and CEO of APMG, and it is one of the few privately owned international accreditation and certification bodies. And I am just so excited because we have a really good conversation lined up for you today. But first, Richard, can you please tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, your origin story, how you started APMG International, and then how have you grown the business over the years?
Hello, Jessica. Many thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. It is great to see you, great to catch up. I suppose, I started life as a civil engineer. So my background was working in the UK, working in the Middle East on some airports and some tunneling projects. And I got into project management when I worked for the London Docklands Development Corporation, which, depending on your point of view, either seriously improved the London Docklands or destroyed London Docklands because it was a thriving port. It no longer is. That was about the time of the Big Bang when, the American banks were looking for large space coming into the UK. And so the Docklands was redeveloped. And at that time, I was on the board of the Association for Project Management. And like many professional bodies, we were struggling to get members to pay their fees. We thought we would set up a trading arm. I suggested to the chairman, maybe the trading arm should be run by a member. And you know how these things happen? You realize you said something and then the ground opens and he says, well, okay, then why don't you do it?
Right.
And I put in a business plan. The business plan was accepted. And so I started to run APM Group as the trading arm of the Association for Project Management.
Wow.
And then you're looking around for some things to do. And the UK government put out a tender to commercialize a product called Prince 2, a project management methodology. So I put together a consortium of two very large organizations, and basically I was a singleton running this trading arm.
Yeah.
And we bid, and we got into the final stages of negotiation, and both of the big partners walked away a week before we thought we were going to sign.
Right. You're like, perfect.
So looked around for another partner. Fortunate, I found UK publishing partner, the stationery office, now TSO, Williams Lee, and they came on board and we won the contract. And this was to take this project management methodology and to commercialize it. And then working with a group of training companies, we evolved a commercial model, we evolved a concept, we brought that to market. And from there, people started to see it, people liked it, more people came on board. And that's really the foundation of the business. And through that, and because this was a time before the internet, so this is about 25, 30 years ago. So, there wasn't put up a website and the world will come. This was, here's an idea, talk to people and maybe they will come.
Right. Yeah. No, and one of the things I love, so when we first spoke, you mentioned sort of how you fell into this, right? You kind of evolved your way through the process. And 31 years later, APMG International is a thriving organization, and you have lots of methodologies and training programs available, which is really incredible. And so it's obvious that you kind of took what the opportunity was and continued to follow the different leads that you had. One door closed, another one opened, and here we are today. Which is really exciting. And so, one thing when you and I were talking previously too, so you're the CEO of the organization, you've been through a lot of ups and downs, and one of those was the pandemic. And how did you navigate all the changes that were happening? I mean, you clearly got some experience early on when you were forming APMG because you were, trying to figure out how everything would work in a without the internet, right? It was a harder way to go. But how did you navigate some of the big changes that have happened over the past 3 decades with APMG and leading your team through all of the different things that were happening in the world with technology? What's that been like?
Well, I suppose the first big discontinuity was when we lost the contract for running these products on behalf of government.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So
It's a big deal.
we were only ever a supplier. We were only ever in a tender. So we didn't own the intellectual property. And
Mm-hmm.
indeed, for our business, it's better not to own the intellectual property because then we're a third party honest broker.
Right.
So we went from, a position where 98%, 95, 98% of our business was based on a government contract
Right.
to no government contract.
There goes a lot.
And
How do you
fortunately,
recover?
well, we were fortunate at the time, we had some cash in the bank.
Mhm.
We had a global business at that time. We did have some other products. And you just sort of do what you need to do, working with the partners, working with people we were in, keeping the team together, making sure the team knew what was going on. Transparent communication was quite important at the
Mhm.
time. And then the people they appointed came to us and said, would you continue to do some stuff? So you ended up as a subcontractor rather than the main
Mhm.
player. So, we basically built it up from then. And that's when, as you say, we started to look for more opportunities, more products
Mhm.
to grow and expand the portfolio. Now that was a known, as a well-known American would call it. So you had a contract, contracts come to an end, sooner or later you might lose it. So when the pandemic hit, when COVID hit, I think that was truly what Nicholas Taleb would call a black swan. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't believe anybody saw that coming. Although people may have run, exercises, what happens if. I don't think anyone
Right.
thought a pandemic would hit that closed the world in effect. And
Right.
at
I
that
agree.
time, 90% of our business at that time were exams being taken in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And we run exams on a weekly basis. So our order book is about 4 to 6 weeks long.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the business stopped.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we did for many organizations that were their business model was in person. Yeah. So then carry
So
on.
we did
Sorry.
have some stuff. We did have some stuff that was online, some stuff was remote, so that
Mm-hmm.
continued. But I think the key thing for me at the time was everybody needed to move online. Everybody had
Mm-hmm.
the same problem. So people
Mm-hmm.
were, moving on to Zoom, moving on to Teams, moving on to those platforms. And collaboratively, you sort of try and solve those problems with each other to try to keep that business moving.
Right.
So it's really about that collaboration, those personal relationships you had. It's about the people you work with, making sure people know where you are. We were lucky that one of the people we work with was we could reschedule some debt. So
Mm-hmm.
people weren't coming knocking on the door. The government scheme came in on COVID relief, so we had to reduce the number of people employed down to about probably a quarter of what it was. Other people
Yeah.
were on furlough. And you struggle through. And I think it's, do you give up, which is always an option, or
Yeah.
do you just knuckle down and see what you can achieve? And we knuckled down, worked our way through it, and 4 years later, here we are. We were fortunate in we have an internal IT team. Most people had laptops. Most people used to working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
All of our systems were in the cloud. You could access information. So you didn't have to physically go into the office to open a filing cabinet and find something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you equip everybody with laptops. Everybody works from home. And
Yeah.
of course, nobody now wants to come back to the office.
I know that's the new paradigm. That is very much, I think many organizations are experiencing that still today. How do you kind of going back to this though? I mean, you mentioned knuckling down and sort of getting through it. How do you keep people motivated when they're feeling so much disruption, when they're feeling afraid and unsure, which is already a part of change, but then you have it at the magnitude of a pandemic where there are health scares and so much more packed into that change. What did you do as the CEO to equip your leadership team, to equip their teams? I mean, how did you handle that?
I suppose there's two main things. One is to share the pain.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're going to have to reduce costs, then I'll take a hit as well as anybody else.
Got it. So they saw that
And
you
they
were
saw,
there with them. Yeah.
and I think the other thing is just to being as transparent and as honest as you can.
Mm-hmm.
This is the situation. This is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we're going to do. We had to make people redundant, so you have to go through that redundancy program. But
Mm-hmm.
if you've got to accept, you've got to understand, I suppose, that everybody has that same fear, those fears that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
How do you overcome them? In the same way, what do you want? You want information. You want to know what's happening. You
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to make your own decisions. So I think just by telling people where we are and what we're trying to do to work through it, people came on board, and then they can understand that. And of course, when you do work through it and things start to pick up again, then you've got to recognize that and be there willing to share some of the rewards of the recovery and when you
Yeah.
plan to bring people back. You know,
Yeah.
it's not rocket science. It's easier, of course, with an organization of less than 100 people. I don't know how
Right.
to handle that with an organization of 5,000-10,000 people.
Yeah, it'd be a different experience, certainly. But there's still some lessons here that I think are really important to kind of reiterate to people that are listening or watching. And you're talking about transparent communications and sharing the pain and also sharing in some of the successes. But one thing that I have noticed over the past couple of decades, working for different leaders, organizations, clients, that there's this mentality at times to paint a better picture of individual's experience with change, where something's going to be happening and maybe the future state is going to be better than the current state based on the numbers, right, and the strategy. But there's this desire to make people, or not make people, have people to paint it in a very nice light. Like, here's where we're going, and here's all the benefits, and here's the reasons why this is great. But there's a lack of acknowledgement that people are scared, people have fears, self concerns. And so, what you were saying is you were vulnerable. You admitted that this is not going, that it wasn't going to be easy and all of the different challenges and fears. And that allowed people, to your point, make their own decisions about whether they wanted to, like, what they wanted to do next. And that bit of self-control and agency is so important, especially when there are so many variables that are unknown. And so I think that's a testament to your leadership style, going through something as big as that, a crisis like that, and the other crises that I'm certain, have navigated through based on the couple of short stories that you've shared. So that's really important. And I think an important message for the C-suite to hear, regardless of the size of the organization. It's not trying to always paint the best picture of the change, but allowing people to process what's happening. What else about sort of, navigating change and growth and the ebbs and flows as a CEO, has been impactful for you over the years, and lessons that you've learned along the way?
I suppose one of the biggest issues is there's no certainty.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, no matter how great the plan, no matter how great the strategy, it's an assumption.
Yeah, it's true.
It's all based on an assumption. So, the number of, when we started with the Prince 2, my business forecast was I'd do 500 exams a year.
Mm-hmm.
People laughed at me and said, "You'll never do 500 exams." I think at the peak, it was 125,000 exams a year in 24 languages.
Wow.
So,
So you almost set your own ceiling and you blew it out of the water.
yeah. And so when you think about it, it's, how do you know how something is going to work out? So, it's all very well trying to sell that vision, but the vision is
Mm-hmm.
based on a whole set of assumptions that all have to come right for that vision to succeed.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
true.
much better to sort of, be much more realistic about that. Share what you're trying to do with people and let people make their own decisions. And
Yeah.
if people decide, well, I don't believe you, it's not going to grow like that.
Right.
And I need to find another job because I think you're going in the wrong direction. Isn't it better that people walk away from you because they don't believe what you're saying and
Mm-hmm.
you're being honest,
Mm-hmm.
rather than stay with you and suffer the collapse when the collapse comes.
Yeah, that's such a great way of thinking about it. That makes sense. That resonates. What about, let's go in a little bit different direction with the conversation now. Kind of coming around to this concept of professional certifications and accreditation. Why are you passionate about professional certifications? What impact can learning have on, as someone who's leading an organization that is focused on this and learning? What about this has kept you going over the past 30 years?
I suppose the fundamental thing is I was the first person in my family to go to university.
Yeah. Wow. Congratulations.
So you start off with a degree,
Yeah.
and the degree is the entry criteria into a profession. My profession was civil engineering.
Right.
So you then need to get professional qualifications in civil engineering if you are going to progress as a civil engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't practiced civil engineering for many years, and the world is probably safer because of that. And then you realize that the professional qualifications give you the knowledge to actually to excel, to do well
Yeah.
in that profession. And they open the door to getting the experience that you need.
Mm-hmm.
So, the world is very, very different now. So there's lots more information sources. There's lots more ways people can get that basic knowledge. But fundamentally, for me, it's about, people can get the basic knowledge that they need to undertake a role. And what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about is, project managers, change management, service.
Mm-hmm.
The theory is fairly straightforward,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got to be exposed to it. So you can understand and learn the theory, which then gives you the opportunity to take a junior role to gain some experience. And then from the
Mm-hmm.
experience, you can build a reputation, you can build a career. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about that opportunity to open up doors for people, that opportunity for people to demonstrate they have the intellect to get their head around the basics, that they then have the basics, and can they then be given an opportunity? And that's why I think it's so important. Education changes lives, I suppose. And it's true for many, many people. And we have an opportunity to do that across a wide range of countries, across a wide range of products. And it's quite exciting that you are making a difference. You're changing lives
Yeah,
with somebody
absolutely.
going on the training course, taking a relatively simple exam, but it sets them apart from people who haven't been on a training course and haven't
Right.
taken that exam.
Right. That resonates with me a lot as well, because I have taken training programs, professional development that has absolutely changed the trajectory of my career. It got me into teaching and training. And, one aspect of your business is accreditation. Why is that still relevant? There's a lot of training programs out there. How does that, what sets someone apart if they've gone through a program that is accredited versus not accredited?
I think it comes back to, do you know what you're buying?
Right.
So, would you go to a surgeon that wasn't an accredited surgeon?
Mm-hmm.
Would you
Try
go to a dentist that wasn't an accredited dentist? Or even an IFA who wasn't an accredited IFA? So for me, the accreditation is about someone meets a minimum standard.
Yeah.
Somebody meets, say, code of conduct. Now, you're not saying that they're brilliant. You're not saying that they are the best in the world, but it is about the test of knowledge. We have safety accreditation on things. You wouldn't buy food that wasn't from a known source. You wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
fly on an aeroplane that hadn't been signed off. You wouldn't drive a motor car that hadn't passed that. So why wouldn't you buy training or consultancy from organizations that have actually been verified by a third party that
Mm-hmm.
what they say they deliver, they do deliver?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's as simple as that for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's something that I care about as well, and is part of my core business too. But I think that it is important for people to be thinking about that, because there are so many options out there and available, and to be able to have a stamp that says this is something that is verified is meaningful, and that creates some credibility and some trust in the provider. So I think that's really important. What I really love about your firm and what you've done too is you offer such a diverse platform of training and certification. It's not just one area, but what I like is it's all complementary. So it's adjacent skills, and you could really skill stack, which I think is important for people today. You know, getting a degree in something and continuing to get education in that area, it deepens your knowledge. I also like the idea of expanding perspectives and bringing in different ideas through the adjacent skills that you can acquire. So I really love that about what you're doing and the value that you're bringing to professionals by offering accredited training in so many different areas. What tips or advice would you give to someone who is new to change management compared to someone, or project management, right? Compared to someone who is very experienced but thinking about, like, what do I do next with my profession?
I suppose if they're new to change management, I think my first advice is you're probably not. You've probably been through a change program, although you may
Right.
not have recognized it.
Whether they realize it or not. Yeah.
So, but I think if you're new to it, yeah, it's a bit of a hackneyed saying, but just learn the basics.
Yeah.
You know, go on that training course, yeah, attend those lectures, understand, yeah, what are the core principles. If you think about it, the change management principles, the project management principles have been around probably for 50, 60 years.
They have. Yeah.
Still the fundamental things. So, yeah, just take the trouble to understand it, just so you can speak the language. So when you're sitting in a room with people, you understand what's going on. So I think that would be my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is all about the people. You know, I don't know who said it, but someone said something like, you manage the process, but you lead people.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. I don't know who said that either, but I like that.
And if you can't take the people with you, whether it's a change program or whether it's a project, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So, you know, you've got to get alongside the people. You've got to understand the people. You've got to work with the people. And at either level, whether you're just starting off or whether you're very experienced, be humble. There's
Mm-hmm.
usually somebody else in the room where you can learn something, and just accept it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you. Well, one more question then, and then I'll let you get back to your day. But I'm curious, what do you see as a leader of an organization that provides training certification? What do you see as some of the big changes coming down the pike, or what are you thinking about? What's top of mind for you as it relates to change and APMG?
I suppose as with everybody else, it's what's the impact of AI?
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's the
yeah,
top question
yeah,
these days.
and I to a small organization, you know, I read some stuff about, you know, you can transform your entire organization through AI and what have you. But having access to those skills is probably beyond us. You know, so
Right.
our use of AI is going to be around the publicly available AI coming out of the big players that you can use and you can adapt and you can basically improve your internal processes. But you can see some changes already in the training field. So I see some
Mm-hmm.
stuff online where people are using AI and chatbots to avatars to create some stuff and present it through that.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that happening, but you know, my fundamental problem about that is, you know, training is often a personal thing. So I can
Mm-hmm.
understand the online training as being affordable. Lots of people can't afford a lot more than that. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't think you can beat a group of committed individuals sitting around the table debating stuff to really learn and understand it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know, a bit like the MOOCs a few years ago when everyone said they were going to change the world of learning and education.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't hear much about them at the moment. I assume there's still some out there, but it didn't have the impact that was expected. And I think AI will probably go the same way. It will
Mm-hmm.
improve content creation.
Mm-hmm.
It will improve speed of changes. It will
Mm-hmm.
improve access to core material. But you know, learning from an avatar, I'm not so sure about for the
Yeah.
majority of people. And
Yeah.
certain things that you need to intellectualize, you need to debate. But I think that's where it's going to come. Prices will drop because online courses will be available. You can see that on things like, you know, LinkedIn Learning and what have you, where people can get
Mm-hmm.
access to that.
Mm-hmm.
But you come back to the thing, you know, someone puts something on LinkedIn Learning. How do you know what they're putting on LinkedIn Learning is a
Right.
good product unless
Right.
it's endorsed by somebody?
Yeah, no, I think about those things too. And as you were describing kind of where you see this going, I think the human people who are willing to be a part of that learning experience, who are putting themselves out there, making themselves available, that'll be the differentiator. And I've seen that in my own business prior to AI. And, you know, to your point, online learning is a wonderful option for people, but it's not going to work for everyone. And when I have been accessible and available to the students that have gone through my own learning, it changes the game for them because they have that aha moment through conversation. And that's really important. And some people don't need it, but some people do. A lot of people do. So I see everything you said, AI being value add, probably not having the impact that we think it's going to. I do see we will gravitate towards people who are present and available to the community. I see that happening as well, because it's starting to become apparent to me, even on LinkedIn, you can tell which posts are AI generated. They're all very canned, very much the same. And you kind of wonder, where's that person's voice in this? So that's kind of what I see, but that resonates. So Richard.
Sorry,
Yeah.
before you finish, you reminded me of
Yeah.
a story when
Yes,
the pandemic
please.
hit. When the
Yeah.
pandemic hit. So I was talking to a trainer who was delivering a course online, and he said his course had 5 people on it. You know, there was someone in the UK, there was someone in Europe, there was someone in Africa, and there was someone in the Middle East. I can't remember where the other one came from. And he said, how could you ever have such a rich group of people on a training course if you weren't using the online system, but it's face-to-face, it's discussion. And that ability to bring different cultures together and different opinions together, you know, is something we wouldn't have had before the pandemic. You know,
Yeah.
people wouldn't have believed that was possible. You know, so it's still face-to-face.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and how I'm looking at it, there's silver linings to a lot of this. There's silver linings from the pandemic, where what you just described was something that has been a positive. I imagine there's going to be silver linings for AI and the impact it has on organizations as well. So that's a really nice way to think about it, at least for me. um, Thank you so much for your time today. I'm really excited to share this conversation with our listeners. Any final thoughts, tips, advice for people who are looking to get training, to grow their careers, for other CEOs who are leading teams? Any final words of wisdom to share?
I suppose 2 things for me. One is training is never wasted.
Agree. I love
You'll
that.
always learn something from it. So invest some time for yourself and see what you can learn. And it is all about the people, not about the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much, Richard. Have a wonderful rest of your day.